Welcome to the second module on understanding unconscious bias. At the end of the first module, we asked participants to practice being aware of their own assumptions and to try to identify strategies to decrease their influence on their behaviors. We hope you had a chance to try that out. In this module, we're going to identify concrete strategies to recognize and manage unconscious bias in our interpersonal encounters. Just as in the last module, we will review the goal of these modules and identify learning objectives. We will describe how it is human nature to be biased. Strategy identification will focus on 3 types of scenarios where we may find bias playing a role. We will focus on the following strategies: responding as the recipient of bias, reflecting on when our biases are activated, reacting as a witness to bias. After reviewing those strategies, we'll provide opportunities to look at case studies and practice how we might respond. Finally, we will summarize the key points and conclude the module. Before we identify strategies, we want to emphasize that bias is a normal part of human nature. We all have it. Because they can influence our behaviors, we want to be aware of them and practice decreasing the influence of our unconscious biases on our behaviors so that we can act as often as possible with our conscious values.
You may not realize it, but your brain actually processes information in 2 very distinct ways. Like when you look at this photo, you instantly know she has blonde hair, is visibly angry, and likely has some choice words to yell. Without any effort, you experienced fast thinking. But if you look at the following problem, something different happens. Sure, you immediately know it's a multiplication problem, and you knew you could solve it if you had the energy, but didn't. If you do try, your muscles will tense, your pupils will dilate, and your heart rate will increase. Now, you've experienced slow thinking. These 2 systems of fast and slow thinking dictate much of our perception and reaction in life. Take these lines for example. It's clear that they're different lengths, but if you measure them, they're actually the exact same length. Even now that you know, System 1, or your fast thinking, can't stop seeing the illusion because it acts automatically. A similar effect is seen here. Which figure is the largest? Again, they're all the same size, but the suggestion of perspective and depth causes your System 1 to interpret the picture as 3-dimensional, even though it's on a flat 2-dimensional surface. It's making quick work of the available information, and so your conscious System 2, or slow thinking, must compensate after the fact and choose not to believe your intuition or instinct. Want to see your System 2 in action? I'll show you a string of 4 digits, you read them aloud, then add 1 to each of the original digits. If the card reads 3795, the correct response would be 4806. We'll then go to the next card and you'll do the same, followed by the next card. Ready? Go. Few people can cope with more than 4 digits, but even harder is add 3. The interesting bit is that though your pupils would have dilated, you often become effectively blind when you fully engage System 2. Did you notice the color of the text change? Or how about the fact that the numbers completely changed when I put them off to the side? Listen to the following puzzle. A bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Chances are your System 1 intuition was yelling 10 cents, but this appealing System 1 answer we know is wrong. In fact, the correct answer is 5 cents. Even if you worked out the correct answer, you likely thought of 10 cents along the way. System 1 is trying to work out an answer as quickly and seamlessly as possible, which is extremely beneficial in everyday life. If every activity required full mental effort, it would be exhausting. But knowing this allows us to understand that not all of our first impressions are correct. How many animals of each kind did Moses take into the ark? So few people detect what is wrong with this question that it's been dubbed the Moses illusion. In fact, Moses took no animals, Noah did. Again, our brain invests as little resources as necessary so that things run quickly and smoothly. Because Moses is not abnormal in the biblical context, System 1 unconsciously detects an association between Moses and ark and quickly accepts the question. In a similar way, System 1 generates context without you knowing. Reading each of the following may seem fairly simple. A, B, C, Anne approached the bank, and 12, 13, 14. but your brain actually interpreted these ambiguous statements without you ever knowing. You could have read it as A13C or 12B14, but your brain created the context unconsciously. Also, you likely imagined a woman with money on her mind walking towards a building with tellers, but if the sentence before this was, they were floating gently down the river, the entire scene would have changed because bank is no longer associated with money. Without an explicit context, System 1 quickly generates one based on previous experience. In this case, you've likely visited more banks than rivers, and so the context is resolved accordingly. This ties into a concept called priming. For example, if I said wash, how would you complete this word fragment? Most would see soap, but had I just shown you the word eat, you'd be more likely to see soup. In this way, both eat and wash prime your thoughts. Though System 2 likes to think that it's in charge and knows what's going on, the truth is that priming effects have even been shown to affect and modify behavior.
As the video mentions, we need both our System 1 and System 2 thinking. Imagine how little work we would all get done if we had to consciously think about everything, including how to take steps to walk into work. As the video states, our assumptions are based on context. Often the context is unconsciously set up for each of us by images we see in the media or previously lived experiences. In the last module, we demonstrated how stereotypes are pervasive in TV shows and other media, including movies and on the news. These stereotypes and our lived experiences can lead to completely different interpretations of the exact same scenario by people involved. We saw this in a video clip from the comedy show Curb Your Enthusiasm. So if it's human nature to be biased, what can we do about it? Before we get to the concrete strategies about what we can do about it, please take a moment to reflect on your own personal narrative. Our individual lived experiences vary and help shape the way we each see the world. Please read the following prompts and write down a few reflections for the next minute or so. Now that we have reviewed bias as a part of human nature and reflected on our own lived experiences, we can identify strategies that might help decrease the influence of unconscious bias in our interpersonal interactions. As we review strategies, please keep in mind that it's human nature to be biased, and that everyone has a unique lived experience which may influence the formation of their unique biases. Consider how frequently we may all be acting and reacting as predicted by our unconscious biases instead of our conscious values during a busy workday. We come from many different backgrounds and with varied lived experiences. Unconscious bias is activated under stress, fatigue, and in unfamiliar situations. We can all work to get to know each other as individuals. Think for a moment to whom you say hello. Is it more commonly to people that you look like, that are in your department? Consider broadening your opportunities for creating an inclusive workplace environment. Consider using counterexamples. Counterexamples refer to considering if the person were the opposite characteristic, would you have reacted the same way or said the same thing? For example, a man or woman, younger or older, obese or thin, black or white. It may be useful when reflecting to stop and ask yourself, would I have done X if the person were Y? Now let's identify what we can do when our biases have been activated. Practice noticing assumptions you make in your everyday life. For example, while you're out and about in environments that are not related to work and where you're more relaxed. Don't be defensive. Remember, the impact of your actions can supersede your intentions. You are not a bad person for having unconscious bias. You are human. Take this opportunity to take a deep breath, pause, and listen to the other person's perspective on the interaction. Reflect back on encounters that had uncomfortable moments and try to see if your bias was at play. Those moments may represent times when the other person may have perceived that we were speaking or acting in a biased manner. Take time to reflect on those moments and explore if your unconscious bias may have influenced your behavior. When you notice that an interaction may have changed or gone poorly, you can consider debriefing with a trusted friend or colleague. If we can ask for a fresh perspective or for help with work-related issues, why not add concerns about bias to those conversations? Let's start with how we will respond as recipients of bias. Presume good intentions, or at the very least, neutral intentions. Give others the benefit of the doubt. Take a deep breath and pause. This can be hard depending on the action or comment, but pausing before reacting may result in a more productive outcome. Have empathy for the other person. Remember, everyone has a different lived experience. This person may not even realize what they said or did was offensive. Consider the influence of their lived experience. Consider finding ways to learn about their perspective. Practice honest inquiry. This is one technique we could use to learn about each other's perspectives. Asking an open question in a respectful manner might uncover where the person is coming from and also help them learn how to make positive changes in their behavior. Correct them in the same way you would any other work-related mistake. Oftentimes, when we are recipients of bias, it taps into our previous lived experiences and may invoke feelings of pain and anger. Reacting with anger or from a place of pain will unlikely get the behavior changed. In addition, it is more likely that the person made an honest mistake. Remember to presume good or at least neutral intentions. Explain how the comment and/or behavior made you feel, and if they are open to it, continue an ongoing dialogue over time. There are several strategies for how to respond to a potentially biased situation that can help raise awareness and minimize defensiveness. Some of these include asking yourself, do you feel that way about the entire group or just one individual? You might ask this when generalizations are made about a particular group. Invoking the offender's egalitarian self-concept. You could simply say, I always thought of you as open-minded, and see where the conversation goes. Provide feedback of the offender's behavior. The discussion should focus on their actions and not on them as a person. This approach will help to minimize defensiveness. Avoiding self-righteousness. Try to find common ground with the person. You might say, I sometimes jump to conclusions too. When something occurs that may be biased, start the conversation by asking, just for my own understanding, in order to explore their perspective. Typically, one of two things occurs. You will understand where they are coming from and realize it was your lived experience that caused the perceived bias when in fact there was none. Or they will discuss their perspective and realize they jumped to a conclusion. Either way, the conversation is generally productive and cordial. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you have witnessed a potentially biased interaction? It can often be complicated by perceived power differentials. There is evidence supporting the idea that actions on all of our parts can bring awareness to bias and improve the workplace climate for everyone. You can verbally or non-verbally express dissatisfaction with prejudiced behavior. This is an opportunity to practice empathy towards others. Not saying anything but shaking your head in disapproval. Just this visual cue may be helpful to bring awareness when there is not an opportunity for full discussion. Not participating in it is also an important step. Just because people may be saying disparaging remarks doesn't mean we have to play along. We can be the agents of change that we want to see. A first step may be as simple as not laughing at the inappropriate joke. Amplifying voices of others. This provides an opportunity to advocate for our colleagues. If you notice that someone is often talked over or ignored during meetings, you can do your part to ensure their viewpoint is heard and help them feel valued and included. For example, if someone makes a statement and is ignored, you can say something like, building on what Pat was saying, and then repeat what Pat said. There is also the option of addressing the potential bias directly. Again, this is an opportunity to practice empathy and compassion for different lived experiences. To summarize, remember that having bias is part of human nature, and that we need both System 1 and System 2 thinking. The key is realizing when System 1 thinking is causing us to jump to a conclusion, influencing our behaviors in ways we would not want it to if we had the time to think everything through more thoroughly. That aha moment is our signal to invoke System 2 thinking so that we could have positive, fair, inclusive, and welcoming outcomes to as many of our interactions as possible. Finally, the keys to managing bias are being aware of when our biases are being activated, being open to the fact that it may have influenced our behaviors towards others, empathizing with other person's perspective, practicing strategies we can each relate to in order to decrease the influence of our biases on our own behaviors and help each other in the process. This completes Module 2. Thank you for your time and attention. We look forward to continuing engagement and enhancement of the workplace environment at Einstein. For additional information, please visit the Diversity at Einstein webpage at www.einstein.yu.edu/diversity. You can also contact Human Resources at 718-430-2544.